Good morning and welcome to our show today. Today we are going to talk about ignorance. I know it's an exciting topic. Is ignorance a good thing? Is ignorance a bad thing? There are people who feel being ignorant is actually bliss, and there are some who feel when you're ignorant, you can actually land yourself in trouble. So today we have a panel of guests who are going to help us just demystify what ignorance is all about. And we are going to bring in a clip from an Islamic perspective that actually helps us to break down the aspect of ignorance. So I'm really looking forward to this session. I know it's going to be exciting. And let's welcome our guests. Wangila, we can start with you.
Good evening, viewers.
Name what you do in Oh, sorry, we've lost him. I know he'll be back. Pastor, probably we can have you.
All right, good morning, and everyone, wherever you're watching us from. My name is Pastor James Haimba, Senior Pastor, Springs of Restoration Center in Kitengela, Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay, thank you. Karibu sana. Collins?
My name is Collins, a teacher by passion and profession, with experience in both 844 and international curriculum. And I'm happy to be here today to talk about this topic on ignorance. Karibuni sana, and back to you, Anne.
Thank you. Wangila, karibu, please just do an intro of who you are and what you do.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Edward Wangila. I'm an advocate of 16 years in practice. I'm in private practice in the city of Nairobi, and I'm grateful to be in this show to discuss about ignorance. So thank you very much, Madam Anne Wafula, for inviting us to the show.
Karibu, karibu. So to kick us off, we'll just play a small part of the clip and have comments by our panelists as we move along. So let me just play the clip.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to Amazed by the Quran, a series in which I like sharing with you things I find amazing about the Quran. Today, actually, I'll go across several ayahs in the Quran that share a specific term, and the term is jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah in the Arabic language means, it comes from the word jahal, which means ignorance, or it also means to be out of control, or to speak out of whim, or to take an action without thinking through it. So acting ignorantly, acting, irrationally, things like that, that's all jahiliyyah. To oversimplify the thing, we could just call it ignorance. Now, the Quran actually attributes jahiliyyah to four things, which is really cool. The first of them is dhannul jahiliyyah, meaning an ignorant assumption. Assumption based on ignorance and assumption based on emotional whim. In other words, you assume the worst about someone, and you assume evil, attribute evil to someone, or you assume guilt when there hasn't been any evidence of guilt. This is all dhannul jahiliyyah. Dhannul jahiliyyah also includes things like, Allah is doing this, but he's probably just punishing me, or he hates me, that's why he's doing this to me. Like, dhannul jahiliyyah could be attributed to people, but it can also be attributed to Allah himself, people having bad assumptions about Allah. That's the first of them.
Yes, so that is the first one, ignorance based on assumption. So, Pastor, we can invite you to share your thoughts on that from a Christian perspective. How do we relate matters of ignorance to assumptions?
When you look across the world, you realize that assumption is really taking a center stage in the way people behave nowadays. You realize that people tend to believe so much what they hear without looking to ascertain whether what they've heard is true or not true. So they just assume that such a thing is the right way to do, or is the right way to follow. And because of these assumptions, it has led to a lot of people either going down into depression and stuff like that. And this ignorance is costing the entire generation as we live in the world today. Now, the Bible says clearly in Hosea 4:6 that my people perish for lack of knowledge. Now, this lack of knowledge is actually a great contributor to these levels of assumption. See, when you assume something, it's because you don't have enough knowledge about it. It's because you don't understand how it works or how it should work. So you just assume. And because of that assumption, you end up in trouble. Spiritually, when you assume a lot of things as a Christian, you do not get to understand what God really wants with your life. You do not get to understand the purpose for which God created you. Because you just assumed that, I am born, I am supposed to live, maybe I'm supposed to marry, and at some point I will die. But if you seek to understand what God wants with your life, if you seek to understand why am I alive,
Sorry, we seem to have lost Pastor a bit. When he comes back, we'll
sorry
bring
for
him
that
on board.
interference.
Wangila, probably you can just share from a legal oh, sorry, he's back.
I didn't get you.
Sorry, we had lost you a bit. Just go on. Okay. Wangila, probably just share with us from a legal perspective the aspect of assumption.
Well, I'll start by saying this. There are many people who make lots of assumptions here, and in legal parlance,
Yeah, the network,
we
I think,
in,
sorry, I'm traveling, so the network got disconnected a bit.
Sorry,
in
just
legal
a sec.
parlance.
You can hear me now?
Wangila, just a sec. Sorry, Pastor, we'll come back to you. Let Wangila just finish and then we'll come back to you. Okay, Wangila, just finish. Yes.
I was saying that in legal parlance, we have a principle in law. It's a Latin principle. I mean, there's a Latin maxim or principle in law that says, "Ignorantia juris non excusant." What that principle essentially means is that a person who is unaware of the law may not escape liability merely because they are unaware of the content of the law. So, in law, from a legal perspective, when you make the wrong assumptions in law, you'd obviously be faced with consequences of that wrong assumption. Because law is written in, we'll say that it's written in black letters. It's there in fine print. So that what happens is that where you make, you are not excused from liability merely because you are unaware of it. So if the assumption is one that doesn't recognizes the position that has been set out in law, you suffer some consequences for it. So if probably I'll just give a small example, is that a lot of us out here tend to do a lot of things. Like, say, for instance, I mean, a lot of us in the out here want to believe that, say, when a thief has been caught taking someone's possession, say stealing, there are people who validate and say that yes, they can go ahead and say probably administer their own form of justice by probably inflicting some injury on this thief. What would happen is that there's an assumption that yes, this thief needs to be punished, but people must remember that the law is also there to protect the thief. And that's why they'll say this person has to be arrested and be taken through some due process. So the minute you think that by you inflicting injury by stoning this thief, if the law was to take its full course, what is likely to happen is that you would likely to be arrested as these people who are actually occasionally, it's actually not mob justice, it's mob injustice. So, and if taken through the process, assuming you are to inflict injury on this thief to the point, say he, maybe he loses his life, what's likely to happen is that the perpetrators of that act, much as they had made the assumption that they were administering some form of justice to this person, can actually be prosecuted for an offense like murder, and you can now tell the kind of consequences that would emerge from that wrong assumption that they are trying to administer some form of punishment to this person. So from a legal perspective, like I said, it is purely on the basis that if you make the wrong assumptions as to the law, there is no excuse to run away from liability. From liability merely because you are unaware of the position in law. Maybe that's maybe how I can summarize it.
Okay, thank you so much for that insight, because many a times we say it's mob justice and actually it's mob injustice. It's good to know we make wrong assumptions. Pastor, now we can come back to you so that you can finish your train of thought.
Yeah. So I was saying that as a person, you need to find out into details why you exist and why things happen the way they do around you. You cannot just live on other people's information of life, because ignorance in itself is no defense, as Wakili has rightfully put it. Because even when you want to do a thing, because what we are seeing today is people doing things because others are doing. They just assume because so and so did it, it looks good. Because so and so is doing it, I think it is fine to do it. But it has to come to a point whereby each one of us has to ask themselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I not doing what others are doing? It is not right simply because someone else is doing it. It is not wrong simply because someone else is not doing it. We need to find information, and information is there. Now, from a Christian perspective, the Bible is supposed to be our guideline. It is supposed to guide us on how to live and how to behave. And it has all the answers you'd want to get. So we need to find deeper from the Word of God, because if you want to work with a machine you do not understand, there's something called a manual. You need to go through the manual so that you get to understand how that machine works and operates. And the manual of a human being is found in the Holy Book. So in the Holy Book, you are able to find out what God wants with your life, so that you don't live ignorantly because of the situation that surrounds our lives. So that would be my opening remark on that particular topic.
Collins, we'll come to you from the perspective of academia. What are your thoughts? And specifically touching on our youth, how does assumptions affect them from an academic perspective? Collins?
Okay. For the opportunity. Yes. Hello, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Assumption is a very bad thing, and in the academic world, for students, for teachers, this is one of the worst things that we can have. I'll start with touching on what teachers can do on this part. Kill students. If a teacher assumes that all students are the same while preparing for a class, then at the end of the day, the teacher will lose the students who learn differently. Because in a class, we are all unique. You have students who are quite fast, you have medium, slow, and the ones who learn differently. So during the planning, a teacher should make sure that you understand each and every learner. Do not assume that all of them are the same. Now, from the other side, our youth is one of the worst things that they do. They assume that the older people know nothing about what they're going through or what is happening to their lives or what they're learning. So in the process, they come to their parents without having formed an opinion, forming an assumption that they know. So whatever you're going to tell them as a teacher, as a parent, as a guardian, will get them one ear and leave the other. So the youth will remain with nothing because of the assumption they've already created, leading to the person learning nothing at the end of the day. Back to you, Anne.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's move to the next point. Let me just play the clip again.
To beautify oneself and to decorate oneself in a way that is ignorant, in Allah. That's the first of them. The second of them is tabarruj al-jahiliyyah, to beautify oneself and to decorate oneself in a way that is ignorant. In other words, human beings naturally have a desire to beautify themselves and to dress well, to live well, to have a beautiful ride, to live in a beautiful city, to move to a beautiful neighborhood, to go to a beautiful place for vacation. These are things, attraction towards beauty is something that naturally comes with human nature. That's something Allah put inside of us. But at the same time, there is such a thing as decorating and adorning oneself in a way that is jahil. In other words, things that violate the code of decency that is clearly outlined not only by revelation, but is also embedded inside human nature according to our faith. Right? So people want to dress in ways that are provocative or overly exposed or indecent, and yet they consider that to be beautiful. Tabarruj al-jahiliyyah could also be, somebody uses vile, filthy language and they think that that's cool. That's a new kind of tabarruj nowadays, a new kind of beautification. Is the more vile and the more vulgar somebody is in their speech, the cooler and the more acceptable that is. And it's a new standard for everybody else to live up to. So that's a kind of tabarruj al-jahiliyyah. The third, so the first one once again was evil or ignorant assumption, and the second is beautification that is rooted in ignorance.
Okay, so we are looking now at the aspect of beautification, but not just generally beautification, but beautification rooted in ignorance. We are looking at matters to do with violating the code of decency. We are looking at the issue of the kind of language that is used, either vulgar or violent language. Now, from your perspective, how does ignorance come in, and what are the potential consequences when we relate it to beautification? Pastor, again, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Anne. The issue of beautification comes in with the erosion of our native way of bringing up. You see, the way we Africans have been brought up, unfortunately, has slowly been eroded away, and we've adapted to the Western culture, which has actually caused many of us to lose our decency. And if you look in the Bible, you will get how a woman is supposed to dress and how men are also supposed to dress. And basically, without going into much details, it is only fair and it is only decent that everyone dresses in a way that is respectful to oneself. For instance, when you look at our people, our young generation today, the youths today, if they are going to look for a job, they will dress in a certain manner. But you wonder what comes upon them once they get that job. A person will present themselves dressed decently as they are looking for the job. But after they get the job, I don't know what comes over their minds again. So you wonder what has influenced them to now start behaving in a different way. We need to understand that it is not a business of exposing our bodies for us to appear beautiful, because beauty, in as much as people would say that beauty is not just in the heart, because we do not work with x-rays to to see the heart, but also it starts from outside, because people will address you by how you dress. They will look at you and make a prejudgment even before they interact with you. There are people that will lock you out even before you start saying what you have, just because of the way you are presenting yourself. And that is a lot of ignorance that we are seeing in our young people today, because they think that, there was a hashtag that did rounds a while ago in this country, my dress, my choice. But as you do my dress, my choice, you realize that it gets to a point your dress is not your choice. You dress for an occasion. Actually, that is a lie. It's a perversion. It's a lie from the enemy, because your dress is not really your choice. Because you dress based on what you're going to do. If you're going for a funeral, you'll have to choose a black suit, for instance. If you're going to a wedding, there is a certain shade of color you will choose, maybe to fit that particular occasion. And we cannot afford to continue being ignorant in how we adorn ourselves, in the sense of trying to achieve some beauty levels. Look at the kind of makeups people apply today. We have seen the side effects. And even though people continually see the side effects, they have ignorantly continued to use some of these products that are harming their skin. I watched a documentary the other day, and the journalist was taking us through the lives of those people that have been affected by what they used to do while they were still young. Now, at an advanced age, they are no longer either able to purchase those creams, those chemicals they were injecting themselves or applying. And as a result, their bodies have now started responding to what they did before. Now, this is pure ignorance, because right now there is someone that is watching such a clip but ignorantly says, "Au ni wao na mimi ni mimi." You see, they can see the information, but they choose to ignore. They just choose to, I want to look good now, I want to have it now. But you see, there is that saying that you can't have your cake and eat it. If you want now, and you are not considering about tomorrow, when age comes knocking, now you realize these things are not good. Take, for instance, if you are doing nudity, if you are constantly exposing your body today, what will you tell your children? Because if God blesses you and you have kids, what will you be telling your kids? I really feel pity for those young parents who keep on exposing themselves on social media, their their private parts. Nowadays, I hear the mouth and the nose. The nose is also a private part because we have to cover it with the masks. I have mine, by the way. It's just because I'm alone in the car, or with my good driver who is already protected. So people should wear their masks. But let us let us have some level of decency, because looking at the society today, the the ignorance comes in by trying to emulate some fashionistas, people who are doing maybe some kind of dressing, and we say that is what we want to become. And that has also led many to sink into depression, because they are unable to sustain such kind of lifestyles. But I pray and I encourage young people to just be decent. Do not go to the extremes because you want to be beautiful. There is more beauty in being natural than being exotic. Because even if you look at how we are dealing with corona today, the most foods you are told to feed on are not exotic. They're actually indigenous. You know, the managus, the dodo, or those very indigenous meals you are told to on. So I plead with the general youth and the general public, let us be natural, because God has created us and everything we need is within us. Let us not go on doing this nudity. Let us not go on applying these excessive makeups just to please somebody at the expense of our own values, at the expense of our own future. Yes.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Collins, I'll come to you. From an academian, the aspect of beautification, how does it affect the youth? And what is it that they can actually do to be able to have more facts and make more informed decisions?
Thanks, Anne. Pastor has really touched on the key things by saying lack of self-awareness. Pastor has brought out that our youth at this point in time are being affected by social media. Talk about Instagram, the influencers, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, and so on. They give the youth this pressure to beautify themselves, to move in the wrong direction, or to be like someone who is not decent. So this brings a problem whereby our youth will use a language to make them feel cool, languages that they see in movies and films, dress in ways that exposes them, which are not decent. And I like what Pastor said. When the youth go looking for work, they look for it dressed properly. I think it's metaphorically, and some of them come in with a very nice behavior at the beginning, but due to pressure from maybe friends or even co-workers there, they change their behavior totally. If they were coming in early at 7, they start coming in late at 9 a.m. So from those sides, and the influence is from what they consume, because we understand that garbage in is equals to garbage out. But why do we have this influence? It's because we have a huge problem with self-awareness. The moment I understand myself, I am who I am. I am Collins. I am A, B, C, D. I'm supposed to do A, B, C, D. I'll stick to that and stick to my line. I'll not follow anyone. So for our youth out there, this type of ignorance can be easily avoided by 1, understanding yourself, 2, choosing the right company and choosing the right things to consume, so that at the end of the day, whatever you consume will build you, not destroy you. That is my view on the same. Back to you, Anne.
Okay, thank you so much. So far we've been able to look at ignorance based on assumption. We've looked at ignorance, that beautification actually that is rooted in ignorance. Now let's look at the next form of ignorance.
Evil or ignorant assumption, and the second is beautification that is rooted in ignorance. And the third, there's only 4. The third of them is hamiyat al-jahiliyyah. Hamiyya actually means ganging up or siding with someone ignorantly. In other words, your affiliation, your loyalty belongs to a group, and it's really not rooted in anything rational at all. You know, like people become crazy fanatical fans of a sports team, ready to fight another team after a match. That's a kind of like a hamiyatul jahiliyyah. Or somebody is so convinced that their tribal lineage is superior to the neighboring tribe, and they are willing to insult the other, look down on the other, almost consider them less than human. This hamiyatul jahiliyyah can manifest itself as tribalism. It could manifest itself as nationalism or obsession with sports teams and things like that. It can also manifest itself even within Islam as my school of thought or my shaykh or my group or my
And we lost the sound.
Assumptions rooted in ignorance, thoughts rooted in ignorance. There's beautification and adorning yourself rooted in ignorance. And then the third one is making or ganging up or making affiliations. Those affiliations themselves are rooted in ignorance. And finally, the last of them and the worst of it, hukmun jahiliyyah. Hukmun jahiliyyah.
Okay. Sorry, I hope we got it. When I did the mute, I hope we didn't lose. Sorry about that. Now, the third aspect of ignorance, the third form of ignorance is actually where we are looking at the formation of gangs, people coming together, probably out of loyalty to one person or wanting to be seen to belong to a certain clique of people. Pastor, what's your take on that?
Well, thank you very much, Anne. In the book of Exodus, we get to hear to read a story of some guys called Dathan and Korah. And when Moses had ascended to the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments, they felt that Moses had taken too long in the mountain. When they felt so, some people started agitating that they needed to see a God that they would identify with in terms of touch and feel. So, as a result, after pressurizing these guys, and Aaron was there, these guys they made some idols and began to worship the idol. One time Moses came and asked those that are for God to come this side and those that are not for God to go this other side. Now, trust you me, there are people who died in the process. Of course, we know the story that the wrath of God came and they were swallowed up by the earth. In fact, God was so angry that he didn't want anybody to touch their carcass. Aliwazika yeye mwenyewe. Now, there are people who died in this particular scenario out of their own ignorance. They didn't know why they were dying. They didn't know why they accepted a certain influence to make a judgment in what they did. Now, in life today, there are people who are carried away by euphoria. They are carried away because a certain group is doing this. Why am I the only one who is not doing? So you want to join them so that you be like them. And that kind of an influence brings a lot of harm to the youth today. For example, there was this thing that trended some while ago, hashtag ifikie wazazi.
Yeah.
And it began by some few guys who just went to the streets and decided to be taking some funny photos. Maybe they had a good agenda in the beginning to take some nice photos, but later on it slowly gravitated towards nudity.
Mm-hmm.
It bordered on pornography and something of that sort. But at the end of the day, because of the influence that it carried, many young people were driven into that. And they started taking photos all over the country without really understanding why. This is now trying to be not to be left behind. Let me take you a little bit back again. You know, history is interesting because if you want to be a good minister, you also have to understand the people you're ministering to. And the young people recently were carried by something that was called Malwede. Can you remember that thing called Malwede? Was it Malwade or Malwede from South Africa? There was a song where the guys used to sing,
Oh,
and then they fall down, Pungulu, and
yes,
then they wake up again.
yes.
Now, this thing, it brought some influence, and ignorantly, somebody fell and injured their spinal cord.
Mm,
I actually had to visit this person, and I asked him, wewe na ni mtu mzima, you are grown up. What came over you? And I was
mm,
just on top of the seat. I thought I should do this thing so that I can also feel young. You see, this kind of
mm,
ignorance because of trying to be in a certain gang. Now, look
mm,
at what is happening in our country today. Even looking at the political arena, you see there are politicians who want to belong to a certain clique because a certain clique appears to be doing well. Well, I don't want to go into politics because it is about ignorance, but I want to tell you that there are groupings that emerge and people rush into joining these groupings, but these groupings end up costing their life, careers, or their families, or their future because of the groupings. I want to belong to a certain thing. In Western Province, I I happened to be in a place called Viga County, and there is a group of some young boys that call themselves, I don't know, 42 brothers, something of that sort. And so I was told that the young people, because I had to speak to a good number of them, have been influenced to join them because it operates in a manner like the Mungiki style. So these people are being influenced to join them, not because it is a good thing, it is a bad thing, but because they are told if you belong to that group, you'll be feared. You know,
mm,
so
mm, mm,
influence that is being created, it is a wrong influence, but ignorantly they make a decision to join them so that they can be like them. You know, I belong to a certain gang. You see, like in high school, when you'd want to work with certain people around you so that you're not monolith. Because if you are known to be a friend to a certain person, then people will fear you. So people have created gangs, and unfortunately, most of these gangs are eroding our social culture. They are eroding the good morals that we should be having. And especially this pandemic period, gangs have come up. Gangs are not necessarily those that are wielding good weapons. You know, we have to demystify this gang. A gang is just any group. Ni group too. It can be a group of guys that are saying we are going for dancing classes. You can imagine from the time the pandemic of corona began, the number of youths that have been wamefumaniwa, you know, they've been arrested doing parties and all that. There are so many. The other day I saw that a number of girls were and boys were caught doing some maybe pornography shoot or something of the sort. Now, what caught my attention is the fact that number one, these are young people who are exposing their naked bodies on social media. What will happen tomorrow? And this is because of peer pressure of wanting to belong to a certain group. Because if I don't do this, I will lose these friends. I want to belong to this group. My friends are Chelsea or Man U fans. If I don't support that team, I will be out of touch and I will be like an old school person. Now, these young people, the other aspect that really made me pray for them is that they only found 6 used condoms, and they were more than 6 girls and there were more than 6 boys. What does that tell you? Were they sharing? Was there unprotected engagement? Now, all this is out of ignorance. They all know the repercussions of premarital sex. They all know there is pregnancy, there are diseases, there are STIs. They know all these things. There is the moral part of it. But they have ignorantly decided because I want to belong to this gang. You know, mimi naendanga na so and so. They have traded their self-value for what the world is offering. And the world is not offering anything better other than that which God has given us already. Because we are turning the world into a Sodom and Gomorrah of a sort. And fire will come down and destroy us. So to the young people watching us out there, I want you to understand that do not ignorantly join any gang for the sake of remaining relevant in your clique. Do not, kindly do not. Find something sensible to do with your life. Find something better to do with yourself. Remember, internet never forgets. This clip you're watching today shall be pulled out from the archives 50 years later when I'm gone, when I will not even be there. What will my grandchild be shown? Atambiwa, you, we know your grandfather. Your grandfather was a porn star.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
So, thank you. In the interest of time, I
It
know
is
you
well.
can share a lot, but in the interest of time,
It is well.
thank you, thank you. Now, Wangila, coming to you, just to pick from what Pastor has said, the issue of belonging to gangs and probably finding yourself in a wrong place and eventually landing in court. I'm sure you've interacted with such kind of youth, and what is your take on that, and what advice can you give to them?
Well, I'll go back to the first, my premise of the discussion this morning, and that's from a legal perspective, where I was saying that for law, it's a basic norm that any form of ignorance of the law is not excusable. So that what happens is, and if I may just take you back a bit, when you talked about ignorance that is out to beautify and you're going against codes of decency and vulgar language, I want to tackle both, and even the question of now belonging to gangs. You'd find like some of us, I mean, when you belong to groups, say like even like for instance, say even the WhatsApp groups, you're in a group, I would call that like a gang in quotes, You're identifying with something, and a lot of times you'll notice that people would be on these platforms. They would say things that would sound normal, things that would sound ordinary, things that no one would probably want to take offense for them. But unfortunately, a lot of us find themselves in the situation whereby you say something on a platform, thinking it's very harmless, but in the process, you find yourself now you are either trying to demean other people's character. What would that result to? I've come across experiences where people are even being sued for defamation on account of things that have just been posted on a WhatsApp group. Now, the question of belonging to a group is about some element of expression. You know, it's freedom of expression. Because you want to be in to associate yourself with a certain, it's freedom of expression and freedom of association. Actually, let me put it that way. It's freedom of association, whom you want to be with. But if a particular group that you are associating with seems to be projecting an agenda that is in contrast with the law, you'll obviously now bear again consequences for that. I'll take the example given by the good pastor. You know, like the group, the 42 brothers, we've heard of Mungiki. You'll note that there's not been good news that has been associated with these particular groups. Much as it is your freedom to associate with some of these groupings so that you perpetuate a certain cause, perpetuate a certain agenda. If that agenda is in any way contradicting with the law, again, like I said before, you'll bear the brunt of the law. The law is always in black letters, so that insofar as association is concerned, and how it may harm us if it is the wrong form of association, is that it will be important for us to know what are the objects of this particular association that you are getting into. So these groupings, and that's why even for simple organizations, they'll always ask in the constitution, what are the objects? What is it that you're trying to advance? So that they're trying to ensure that whatever you'll be advancing has to be in line with what the law would obviously be advocating for. So my take is that for young guys specifically, let them know that at any given time, when they want to put themselves in this kind of groupings where they have to probably, you want to relate with them, it will be important to interrogate what are the objects of this particular associations, because it's very, like I pointed out before, for as long as that association is in conflict with the law, there will always be penal consequences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just coming to you, Collins, just to rope in now from the academic perspective. I know there are groupings in school and they have a direct link to performance. It can be positive, it can be negative. What's your take? If we could mute our mics if we are not speaking, please.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. It's true. Groupings will either influence performance positively or negatively. And let me start by looking at the negative side. As Wakili has said, if you associate with the wrong group, in a school is some kind of a small government. And the moment you're caught with people who are doing the wrong thing, even if you are there just standing watching them, the question is it that you didn't get time to do what they were doing, or are you keeping it so that you do it next time? So being in the wrong group will definitely put you in the wrong side of school rules and regulations. Same as the law of the land. Now, if we look at it from the positive side, if a student decides to associate with learners who study a lot, do the right thing, they're going to do well. But the thing that we should always ask ourselves is, where does the rain start beating the students? Where does it all go wrong? And this will take us back to self-awareness and rejection. You'll find that a good percentage of the students who are going to be in the wrong cliques, wrong groups, will face rejection, probably from home, parents or guardians, or they get a lot of pressure from parents and guardians at home. So when they come to school, they're trying to fill up a gap, or they're trying to get someone who's going to approve them and say, you're doing good. So you'll find them, they'll ignorantly be loyal to a student or someone. If it's youth in our universities, they'll be loyal to a person who is pushing them in the wrong direction, but simply because that person is accepting them and misusing them after their rejection they've gotten from home. The pressure again, if there is too much pressure, they look for a place to diffuse the pressure or reduce the pressure, and that is by joining the wrong groups. Um, I like the way Pastor put it before he left, and he said, a gang is a gang, just a group of people. It is not a must. We say gangs are bad. But we've usually used gangs in light of bad things. So a gang or a group of students will determine how their performance will be, depending on which side they choose to stand on. But I'd like to call upon parents and guardians. Be a friend to your child. Be a friend in a way that you can guide them so that they can be able to explain to you if you're pushing them too hard, or if there's something wrong before they go too far and the law catches up with them at the end of the road. Back to you, Anne.
Thank you. Wow, quite some insights there. And I'm hoping that our viewers are getting some pointers on what to do with the issue of ignorance. So let's look at the clip for our final aspect of ignorance and just see what it is and how it affects us on a day-to-day.
Finally, the last of them and the worst of it, hukm jahiliya. Hukm jahiliya, the affiliations themselves are rooted in ignorance. And finally, the last of them and the worst of it, hukm jahiliya. Hukm jahiliya is the decision making that is rooted in ignorance. Entire decisions are made because of just whim, for nothing more, you know. And you know what's really remarkable about these four? There's a progression here. Because if a society, what becomes rampant in a society is people just make assumptions about each other. And when people are obsessed with the outwardly beautification, so much so that they're even willing to violate the codes of decency, and all that matters is what looks good to them. And then the standards of what looks good gets more and more and more vulgar, right? And then on top of that, they're in these two standards, they're now ganging up with each other, and they're all like, they're united then, and nobody can question it. This becomes the new standard of morality for humanity. Nobody can actually criticize it. When that happens, then the rules, the verdicts, the impositions that they will put on society, those verdicts, the hukam, will actually be rooted in ignorance itself, hukm jahiliya. And when it comes to that final phase, all that's left for that society is corruption and eventually destruction. So Allah criticizes ignorance, but He actually breaks ignorance down into like four things. And the last one, meaning a society governing itself by ignorance, is actually the final phase. There are other previous steps that come in. And so I find this actually absolutely remarkable that Allah Azza wa Jal pinpoints where Jahiliyyah begins. What are the precursor steps before a society lays itself to ruin? Allah Azza wa Jal make us a people that are against Jahiliyyah in all of its forms, and are able to identify that kind of ignorance and that kind of irrational behavior in ourselves and in the people around us, and are able to become people of reason and sound judgment. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wow, this I think is the epitome of our discussion. It's actually deep. Let me start with Wangila this time, and then I'll come to you, Pastor. Wangila, from a societal perspective, what is the cost of ignorance? Your mic is mute.
Sorry, thank you, Anne, for that insight. What I was going to say is, what's the cost of ignorance in society? The cost of ignorance is quite immense. From a legal perspective, I mean, I probably may want to use examples as the best way of trying to explain this. Like I mentioned before, I'm a practicing lawyer. I go to court on a day-to-day basis. And there are occasions when I am in court and you are able to meet people who have been presented to court for various reasons, whether it's a case they're prosecuting for themselves or whether they have been charged in a court of law, say, for one offense or the other. And at times, you realize that some persons find themselves in a lot of difficulty. Either now they say get wrongly convicted merely because they did not understand, like the whole process, going to court. Because a person would probably be asked, like take for instance, like when you go to court, they will ask you, you are accused of a certain offense. Do you plead guilty or not guilty? So there are occasions someone will say, yes, I plead guilty. But there's the second question that the court would ask. The second question would be, can we we'll set out the facts that, explain the offense that you committed. And usually, a lot of them, when they're given that opportunity, they will start saying the story about, yes, yeah, I did this thing, but it was because of this reason or the other. A lot of judicial officers, when it gets to that point, matters you have pleaded that you had already pleaded that you are guilty, they would enter a plea of not guilty, because they're seeing your explanation is trying to contradict your plea already. The cost of that is that it's like there's a lot of judicial time now wasted because you have to go through these endless trials. That's one. Two, again, like I said, the law, the good thing about it, Madam Anne, who is hosting us for the show, it's static. It's always static. So when decisions are made based on wrong whims, like I said, consequences will always follow. That's the good thing about the law. It matters not whether you are looking at it emotionally. It matters not whether you are looking at it from a secular perspective. The law is always static. So the issue is that when you if your whims are such that they are wrong, it follows that what would happen in that case is that whatever decision it is that you've made, in whichever way it contradicts again to the law, and you realize even this discussion, insofar as the legal perspective is concerned, it's always the foundation is whether there is a contradistinction with the law. So because of that aspect of the law being static, it doesn't change unless, well, people do it. So that what I'll just say is that the cost of ignorance generally in society is that it makes the cost of doing things very expensive. You also have to waste a lot of time because you have to explain a lot of things. A lot of resources have to be spent, like for instance in courts, they'll have to, even just for proceedings, because they understand that some of the people who come before them people who might not be well versed with the processes. Courts will have to hire interpreters. Courts will have to hire specialists just to explain certain things to people. So it makes the whole process or the cost of even say running the government very expensive because people don't seem just to understand some of these basic things. So I mean, probably so as not to probably take in so much time for the other presenters, maybe I'll want to end it there.
Thank you so much, Wangila. Pastor, will come to you. What is your contribution to this, the impact of ignorance on society?
Well, when we talk about moral decay, it's very wide and it goes deeper than what can be covered even in an hour. However, in a nutshell, is the society, we have a responsibility to shape our yardstick. You
Mm,
see, what we call right or wrong largely depends on ourselves. There are places that people have accepted, for instance, gayism as a normal way of life.
mm,
But there are places you will try to force that down our throats, and we'd rather die than accept that. So again, the issue of because we are handling the part of the moral decay, and the generally accepted morals that we have either imported or learned from other people have contributed to some level uh, of how people take it in life. For
mm,
instance, now, if you look at even the kind of leaders we elect, some of them are unfortunately being considered as the pace setters of what the society should be like. And if you look at their behavior, if that is what to go by, then it actually means my good friend Wangila should be representing all of us in court, because we are not supposed to obey any court orders. We are not supposed to obey any Ministry of Health guidelines. And all this is because of the yardsticks that we are looking at, because of the people that are ahead of us, expecting we are expecting them to show or to lead the way. Also, if you look maybe in the church today, you realize that we pastors are receiving a lot of bashing of late, because everybody says, church is business, pastors are this and that. But why is that so? It's not because there are no good people, it's because there are few rogues, and those few rogues, unfortunately, have what it takes to show to the world what they are made of. These rogues are the ones that will be so much on TV, on social media, and all that. But there are very many that are doing a good work that we could use as pace setters, but because they don't have the maybe the capacity to be seen or to be heard, then their wisdom goes. A story is told of a poor man who had the wisdom to save his entire country. But because he didn't have the capacity to deliver his wisdom, the country perished, because the country was being governed by some unwise men. Now, when we come to moral decay, this is my charge to the parents, even before we come to the young people. I would want to charge the society in terms of the parenting. Let us come up with communities that we can have some agreed, thresholds of our morality, such that if I hear my child is with Anne's children, I am
mm,
comfortable, because I know with Anne, my kids will learn the right things.
mm,
And if I hear is at Collins' place, I'll know, Teacher Collins, yeye amelea watoto wake in a good way. So it
mm,
also comes back to us as parents. Recently, there was a clip that did rounds of a small boy that was speaking vulgar language and abusive language to
mm,
even adults, sending threats to even adults that he has no control over. And
mm,
one would ask, where was the parent when this kid was recording? Of course, we will say, nowadays parents are busy, we are working, we are doing all this and other. But do we ever take time with our children to find out what they have learned during the day? One friend of mine recently, before the pandemic, resigned. I don't know if he would have resigned if the pandemic had already begun. But why they resigned is because one day the wife told the children, to do some assignment, and the child told the mother, auntie alisema haifanywangi hivi, inafanywa hivi. The mother said no, you should do this, na nisikupate umeenda mahali fulani. And the child told the mother, nitakusema kwa auntie na auntie atakuchapa. Now the woman realized she had lost it completely, totally. She was not in control of her own child. It is the aunt that was in control of the child. Now then the question comes in, what is the aunt feeding the child? Not the food, not the kula kwa tumbo. What are the people that are spending most of the time with our children teaching them? If Collins was my child's teacher, I would go deeper and seek to understand who is Collins. Not only do I want to know him as a teacher, and I like what Collins began when he introduced himself. He said, I am a teacher by passion and then profession. You see how it begins. So I would want to know this person that is handling my child, what are they inculcating? What culture are they inculcating in my child? In the Jewish culture, between age 0 to 5, a child would be taken into some training, and by the time they are 12 years old, hapo ndio alikuwa anaitwa the child of the father, anakuwa ni mtoto wa baba sasa, maana ametoka mafunzo basic, ameelewa what is their culture and what they are supposed to do, more or less what the Muslims would do with the madrasa. But we as Christians, we are the most affected when it comes to moral decay. Why? Because we have abdicated our duties. We have left our children to the nannies. We have become busy chasing dreams and goals because we want to become successful. But when we get to the top of success, our children are long lost. Our generation is not there to celebrate with us the victory. That's why when you now look back, you see them in drug addiction, you see them in depression, you see them in bad groupings altogether. Finally, as we talk about moral decay, there is a wave that is now happening. You've seen the artists that are in depression. Until this one of them by the name Zedi started speaking out, we have now started seeing a trend of these comedians coming out and confessing, indeed, I am under depression, I am under this and this. All this is because of the moral decay in the society. The society is putting so much pressure on our young people. Young people cannot appreciate the mutumba cloth that the parent can afford. So what do? Because of the pressure, they will join a gang. They will ignorantly be driven into a sugar daddy or a sponsor life so that they can live up to a certain life. Now, when we allow our children to go that route, we are losing an entire generation because our generation will not be able to stand tomorrow. I really feel bad when I ask myself, who will my child marry? Or who will marry my daughter? Because if I am taking care of mine, jealously, I'm guarding them jealously. But I will not guard them in campus. I will not guard them when they go to high school and they're in boarding school. I will not be with them. So I need another parent to also take care of their children in a good way, and another one, and another one. So that wakipatana kule nje, they're okay. And that is why you realize in campuses, ndio watoto wanaharibika zaidi. When they go to boarding, wanaharibika zaidi because we never trained them to be independent and inculcate in them strong morals. You know, the morals that you would stand and say, where you are the edge of my father, wachana na mimi. We are the age of my mother. You can't come asking for a relationship from me. You know, you are my age mate, yes, but what you're telling me is against what I have been taught. You know, so it boils back to us as parents. And for young people, let us learn to respect ourselves, respect what we have learned from our parents, hoping that our parents have given us the best. Or if they have not given us the best, you know, there is a point whereby you decide to learn things on your own, right? And as you decide to learn, you learn from the best. You don't learn from the worst. You you look for a role model that will give you a proper guide and a proper ending in your youth life. With those remarks, and I really appreciate for hosting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Collins, probably you can sum up for us the impact of ignorance. Because you see, when we are looking at academia, we are looking at this is the foundation we are putting for the future. And as just Pastor has asked, who is going to marry my daughter? Am I comfortable with the kind of character I'm seeing out there? So at an academic level, what role can you play in terms of trying to deal with this ignorance that we are talking about?
Thank you very much, Anne. And Pastor, umenena kweli. Nani ataoa mtoto ama mtoto wako ataoa nani? That's a very powerful statement there. And it's saddening because we know that nowadays the world is a bit different. As much as parents will come in, but also social media and all other forms of media are coming in to parent our children. So it's really a tough one and a good call to parents to be on the lookout. The impact of ignorance in education or academics or in the academia. Now I'll look at it in two different parts. Pastor and Wakili have looked at the negative side. I'd like to start on the positive side. And now, everyone starts from a point of ignorance. There's a statement that says ignorance is bliss. You're happy when you don't know. But I'm a strong believer of knowledge is power. If you know something, you have the power to change it. But we all start from unknown to the known. So the moment we accept ignorance and say, yes, I am ignorant, I don't know. But that specific moment you do that, you open your mind, you will be willing to learn. You will be willing to accept what you're going to be told. But this has to be in the positive side. For example, in school, and the students coming to learn a new concept. If they come with the idea that I read about this, and this is the only way I think it's going to work, they are not coming as ignorant, they are coming knowing, and probably they'll live with maybe 5 or 2% of what the teacher is going to teach because they've blocked their mind. So we should always be willing to accept that I am ignorant and I need to learn. There's a powerful phrase which is usually used nowadays for the youth coming out of colleges and universities. You're told to unlearn, learn, then you relearn. When you're done with your degree as a youth, you come to the workplace, and what you see and what you learned sometimes do not go hand in hand. So what you need to do at that point is unlearn everything, be ignorant, accept to be taught by your seniors. That is a process of now you start learning. And then after that, as they let you go and you start doing it on your own, you relearn it. So it's a cycle. And this one does not only apply to the youth, but cuts across everyone. At this point, for us teachers, when we got to March, we got a shocker. We had to start teaching online. We had to unlearn everything that we knew about teaching physical classes and learn new ways of teaching online. And then now we are relearning and getting used to the craft. So this is something that you have to say, yes, I am ignorant. I don't know. So where can I learn? And I'll base this to the phrase that I used in the beginning. We are all human beings who are on an island of knowledge surrounded by a sea of ignorance. So no one particular person is the custodian of knowledge. We have to continue learning. So the youth have to take that into consideration and always understand we need to keep on learning. Lastly, we have people who feel like they don't really need education. They can just do it on their own. And you hear stories of someone dropped out of class 3 or someone picking the story of Bill Gates and the owner of Facebook and using it as an example of why they should drop out. But I'd like to leave them with this quote, which says, if education is expensive, try ignorance, and you'll understand why education is very, very important, not only to get a job, but to expand your mind. You, Anne, those are my closing remarks. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. I think I'll always remember that I am on an island surrounded by a sea of ignorance. An island of knowledge and surrounded by a sea of ignorance. Now, just as we come to the close of our session, there's a comment that has just come in from Eunice Namuki, and she says, just thinking aloud, maybe we should come up with forums where we guide parents to guide the children, because it's like it's us parents who have failed terribly. It's always said watoto wa siku hizi, but I think we should say wazazi wa siku hizi. I know it's a it's a mouthful. Probably we don't have time to comment on it, but probably that can be food for thought for our program and see what we can do in terms of also coming up with content that can be shared with the parents. So we've run out of time, but just take a minute, give your closing remark. I'll start with you, Pastor. Just a minute, please. Then come to you, Wangila, and close with you, Collins. A minute, you're parting short.
Thank you very much, Anne, for organizing this forum and hosting us. To the viewers out there, responsibility begins with yourself. You need to take responsibility and do the right thing in the right way. Because at the end of the day, no one is accountable for your life or your actions. It is you who will be accountable for them. It is better to live a good life. Do not want to live like so and so because you see them floss around and you think they're doing better. It is about also we as parents going back to proper parenting, schedules and parenting ideas. Let us be parents, not just people who sired children. Let us be parents. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Wangila?
In closing, I'll go back to where I started from. That ignorance of the law shall not in any way excuse you from escaping any liability that comes with that ignorance. And just borrowing from what the pastor and Mwalimu has said, the responsibility begins with ourselves. We have to take the responsibility to learn, like Mwalimu has said. For young people, please note that the ignorance that at times we exhibit out here can come very costly, and we must be willing to act in accordance to the expected norms. You know, like when it comes to legal issues, we ought to act in accordance to those expected norms. Remember that being young will not in any way excuse you from facing the full force of the law, and that it is important that we all become aware of this, so that even as we go around doing our businesses, we don't find ourselves on the wrong side of the law. Thank you very much, Anne, for asking me to be part of this show, and even for our viewers, I hope you've been able to learn something. Probably we'll find some other time to discuss these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wangila. I appreciate it. Finally, Collins, your closing shot, your parting shot, rather.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Thank you to Akili and Pastor, to the youth out there, and to everyone, even the parents. We should know that we have two types of ignorances. We have destructive ignorance, the one that will lead you to trouble, and we have constructive ignorance, where you accept that I don't know, and you're willing to learn. So let's keep that in mind, and we take responsibility, be the drivers of our lives and not the passengers. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anne, and back to you.
Thank you very much. I would like to take this opportunity to, first of all, thank our guests. Pastor, very short notice, but we really appreciate You sorted us out a lot. Wangila, thank you. And also thanks for that linkage. Collins, as usual, thank you. Bringing that wisdom from an academia perspective, very important for us. To our viewers, we appreciate you and we encourage you to keep on tuning in and listening to what we have to share and giving us your feedback. As we part, please remember what Mwalimu has said. There is constructive ignorance, which we encourage. Continuous learning, because we are not custodians of all information. So challenge yourself to learn something every day so that we are able to deal with the ignorance. But if you choose to be destructively ignorant, as Wakili has said, you will have to bear with the consequences. You'll face the full force of the law. So the choice is ours. Nobody will hold a gun to you. The choice is yours. Either be constructively ignorant or destructively ignorant. And with that, we come to the end of our show. Let's meet you again next week on Saturday, same time, same place. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you so much, guys. And stay blessed. Pastor, asante sana.
Karibu, asante.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.